Welcome back. This is another adoption episode. Before we start, do the YouTube things. Subscribe, like, comment, click whatever button convinces the algorithm I exist. Tell me where you're listening from. Country, state, emotional witness protection program. Yes, I want engagement. Yes, it's learned behavior. No, I'm not pretending it isn't. This episode continues straight from the last one. Compensation. What we do to belong. What we pay to stay in the room. All right, let's go. I'm sitting at a desk in the house I live in now. Not the house I grew up in. Not the house I'll probably die in. Just the current one, which already feels on brand. The desk is plain, functional, flat. It doesn't ask questions. It just holds things while I work. Which, if I'm being honest, is probably why I like it. My calendar is open. Names, dates, notes written in my handwriting that look harmless but absolutely are not. Birthday, Christmas, milestone, which is code for say this wrong and emotionally nuke someone's week. This is my job. People hire me to write for them. Sometimes they're dead. Sometimes they're alive but emotionally unavailable, estranged, or allergic to vulnerability. Either way, I'm the middleman, the person who turns intention into language that won't blow everything up. The rule is simple. The words must sound like they came from them, not from me, not with help, not inspired by. If I do this right, no one notices me at all. The recipient feels seen, the sender feels present. And I quietly exit the exchange like a ghost who knows better than to linger. And here's the unsettling part. It doesn't feel hard. I don't warm up. I don't get nervous. I sit down and my body already knows what to do. Tone shifts. Language softens. I can feel which words will land safely before I even finish typing them, which is impressive and also deeply suspicious. Because people usually have to learn how to do this. I start writing. And immediately I'm editing before the sentence finishes forming. Not because it's wrong, but because it might be too honest. I remove a word that feels sharp. I swap a phrase so it lands gentler. I don't erase the truth. I pat it. This isn't creativity. This is risk management. I'm not asking, what do I want to say? I'm asking, how will this be received? That question shows up automatically, like muscle memory. Like I've been running this program in the background for years without realizing it was there. I'm protecting the recipient from feeling too much at once. I'm protecting the sender from sounding harsher than they intend. I'm protecting the moment from tipping into something unstable. Because instability has consequences. And here's where it gets funny. Because while I'm doing all this, I'm not thinking, wow, I'm really working hard. I'm thinking, this is fine. This feels normal. Which is when it dawns on me that this skill didn't come from writing. No one trained me to do this. No workshop taught me how to read emotional weather patterns before the storm hits. I learned this by being the kid who figured out how to keep the room intact. The one who learned early that the safest way to belong was to manage tone, anticipate reaction, and never be the thing that made everything fall apart. So of course I'm good at this job. It's the same job, just with better stationery. Halfway through a sentence, I stop. Not because it's wrong, because it's heavy, like it might land too hard, like it might make someone feel something they're not ready to feel yet. And suddenly I'm annoyed. Not reflective, not emotional, annoyed. Because I recognize this move. This isn't professionalism, this is pattern. I'm not just writing carefully, I'm making myself smaller inside the work. I'm shaping the truth so it doesn't threaten the structure. I'm prioritizing stability over expression without even checking if anyone asked me to. That's when it clicks. This isn't a writing skill. This is an adoption skill. This is the thing you learn when your place feels conditional, when belonging isn't guaranteed. You learn how to be agreeable, adaptable, emotionally fluent. You learn how to carry meaning for other people while keeping yourself out of the way. I wasn't taught how to belong. I was taught how to maintain belonging. And sitting there at that desk, staring at a sentence I already softened once, I realized something uncomfortable. This job didn't create this behavior. It just rewards it. Which means this isn't about writing at all. It's about survival that learned how to look productive. The paper on my desk now pulls me backward without asking permission. It's Christmas, not the movie version, the real one. Crooked lights that half work. A house that smells like pine, sugar, and mild adult resentment. Someone tells me to sit at the table and write my letter to Santa, like this is a wholesome activity and not my first unpaid internship. I'm little. The chair is too big. The pencil feels sharp in a way that matters. The paper is clean in a way that feels dangerous. Other kids write fast, loud, long lists, bikes, toys, stuff that makes noise and takes up space. I don't. I hesitate. I write something. I erase it. I rewrite it smaller, kinder, more polite, because I'm not actually asking Santa for things. I'm asking for stability, for people to stay, for whatever this family configuration is to not implode before New Year's. I don't know the word belonging. I just know I'm negotiating for it. So I pre-thank Santa. I soften the ask. I make it sound like I'll be happy with whatever I get. I don't ask for much. I never do. I make sure the letter proves I'm good, grateful, worth the effort. And here's the part that's funny now, but absolutely wasn't then. I'm treating Santa like a caseworker. Like, if I phrase this correctly, I get to stay. No one tells me this is strange. No one says, hey, maybe kids shouldn't feel like they're auditioning for permanence. So I assume this is normal. I assume everyone does this. The first version of the job. Writing myself into a story carefully enough that no one deletes me. Back in the present, I'm writing again. Different desk, different house, same exact instinct. I notice it now because I'm looking for it. The way I pause before asking for anything. The way I instinctively phrase things like requests instead of needs. The way I soften my own presence so it doesn't feel like too much in any room I enter. It doesn't matter where I live. This comes with me. Adoption doesn't teach you roots. It teaches you portability, how to set yourself down lightly in new spaces, how to unpack just enough to be tolerated, how to make yourself fit the furniture without rearranging the room. So when I'm hired to write for someone else, of course I know how to do it. I've been writing myself into other people's lives my entire life. I've been translating tone and intention since before I could spell either word. The funny part is how invisible this looks from the outside. People call it being easy. They call it being good with people. They call it emotional intelligence. They don't call it what it is. Practice. Practice in not taking up too much space. Practice in being useful. Practice in making sure the system works even if you don't. The desk I'm sitting at now isn't special. It's just the latest place where this skill shows up and clocks in on time. Same job, different address. The TV is on in the background while I write, not because I'm watching it. Because silence feels risky. Silence leaves too much room for thought. The TV fills the space like furniture. Voices drift in and out. A laugh track. A problem introduced. A problem resolved. People apologizing at the correct moment. People being forgiven on schedule. I'm not paying attention, except I am. Because something clicks. This is where the script gets reinforced. This is where you learn how stories reward behavior. How the good character acts. How much emotion is acceptable. When it's safe to speak and when it's better to wait for the commercial break. TV is generous like that. It gives you rules without asking if you consent. For an adopted kid or any kid who feels slightly out of place, this matters. Stories teach you how to stay in the narrative, how to be likable, how to be redeemable, how to earn your spot before the credits roll. So you rehearse. You learn timing, tone, delivery. You learn how to apologize convincingly, how to be grateful, how to smooth conflict so the story can keep going. And one day, you're an adult, sitting at a desk, writing someone else's words for them, and it feels completely natural. Because you've been doing narrative maintenance your whole life. You just didn't know it was called that. Then, something shifts. Not dramatically, not in a way you can point to. Just a subtle sense that the relief doesn't last as long as it used to. The room settles, but only briefly. The quiet afterward feels thinner, less convincing. So you do what makes sense. You increase the payment. You explain more. You soften earlier. You anticipate reactions 2 steps ahead instead of 1. You preempt discomfort before anyone else even notices it might arrive. This is where it gets darkly funny. Because no one asked you to do this. No one sent a memo. No one raised the bar out loud. You did it internally, automatically. Like muscle memory kicking in when you didn't even realize you were bracing. You become hyper-efficient, hyper-aware, hyper-responsible for outcomes that were never yours to manage. You don't just participate in conversations, you manage their trajectory. People like this version of you. Of course they do. You're easy. You're smooth. You're emotionally low maintenance because you do the maintenance yourself, privately, after everyone leaves. And here's the trap. Praise starts replacing relief. You're so understanding. You're so grounded. You're so good at handling things. Handling things is not the same as living, but adoption logic doesn't care about that distinction. It cares about staying in the room, so you keep paying. At some point, the skill stops being optional. This is subtle, which makes it dangerous. People don't say, "We expect you to manage this." They just pause longer when you don't. Silence lingers, tension creeps in, something feels unfinished until you step in and smooth it over. And when you don't, there's a flicker, confusion, discomfort, not anger, worse, expectation. The room has learned who you are, or more accurately, it's learned what you do. This is when adaptability turns into assignment. You're no longer someone who can translate, you're someone who should. Your absence becomes noticeable. Your boundaries feel disruptive. Your quiet feels like negligence. And because you were trained early to protect the structure, this feels unbearable. Adoption teaches you to read the room before reading yourself. It teaches you that stability is fragile and easily lost. So when the role becomes a requirement, you don't protest, you comply. Because compliance once kept you safe. What's funny, in a bleak way, is how long it takes to notice the shift. You don't wake up one day resentful. You wake up tired, then irritated, then quietly furious at yourself for feeling that way. Because you're the one who said yes first, then it stops working. Not all at once, not with fireworks, just enough that you notice. You do the thing, you say the right words, you manage the tone, you hold the emotional weight, and afterward, nothing settles. The relief doesn't come. The room doesn't feel safer. The relationship doesn't feel more stable. The familiar internal exhale never arrives. It's like you paid the bill and the receipt printed, but the lights stayed off. That's new and unsettling. Your first instinct isn't insight, it's troubleshooting. Did I miss something? Did I soften enough? Did I anticipate correctly? Because when something fails in an adopted system, the assumption is always user error. You don't question the system, you question yourself. But there's a quiet panic under the troubleshooting now. Because if this doesn't work anymore, then what has been holding everything together? You're still at the desk, still capable, still functional. But the role you relied on no longer guarantees belonging. And that cracks something open, not a solution, not clarity, just awareness. This isn't the end. This is the hinge, the moment where you realize the payment may never have been sustainable and the bill has been coming due the entire time. And the story keeps moving. At some point, usually way later than is convenient, you realize you're not just behaving, you're dressed. Not literally, although let's be honest, even the clothes were chosen carefully. Neutral, approachable, nothing that would require explanation, nothing that would invite questions like, "Are you okay?" or worse, "What's your deal?" But the real costume isn't fabric, it's tone, timing, expression, the way you soften your voice before you even know why, the way you smile slightly longer than necessary, the way you laugh at jokes that aren't funny because the room expects punctuation. And suddenly it clicks. Writing wasn't the beginning of this. TV wasn't the beginning of this. Christmas letters weren't the beginning of this. They were wardrobe fittings. This was the outfit you put on to belong. The adoptee wears it. The divorced kid wears it. The neglected kid wears it. Anyone who learned early that love came with conditions wears it. You learn how to look grateful, how to sound reasonable, how to appear fine. You learn how to play the role so well that eventually you forget it is a role, which is impressive and deeply inconvenient once you notice. Because once you see the costume, you can't unsee it. And suddenly, everything, from how you sit at the desk to how you phrase an email, feels like blocking in a play you never auditioned for, but somehow headlined anyway. Here's the part people don't like hearing. It wasn't just the kids. The parents were acting too. Adoptive parents performing, "We're doing this right." Biological parents performing, "This is normal." Divorced parents performing, "We're fine, everything's fine." Everyone performing stability, like the house would collapse if someone admitted they were winging it. Parents weren't villains. They were terrified stage managers. They watched the kids for cues, adjusted lighting, changed tone, tried to anticipate emotional landmines. And when something went wrong, they doubled down on performance instead of questioning the script. Meanwhile, the kids learned fast. The adoptee learns to be grateful. The divorced kid learns to be the emotional buffer. A neglected kid learns to be invisible or impressive. Dealer's choice. Everyone is parenting everyone else. Kids parent their parents' feelings. Parents parent appearances. No one wants to break the narrative because the narrative is the only thing holding the set together. And this is where it gets almost funny if you're looking at it from the outside. Everyone thinks they're the only one acting. Everyone thinks everyone else knows what they're doing. Spoiler, no one does. We weren't a family. We were a cast, and the show must go on. Every stage has boundaries. This one came with invisible tape on the floor. Inside the box, gratitude, politeness. Let's not make this harder than it already is. Emotions, approved versions only. Outside the box, anger, need, truth that arrives without manners. You learn where the lines are by watching what happens when someone crosses them. You learn fast. You learn quietly. You adjust. Belonging becomes less about connection and more about compliance. If you behave correctly, you get to stay in the scene. If you don't, things get tense, awkward, quiet in that way. That means you messed up. So you stay in the box. You don't call it fear. You call it being considerate. You don't call it self-erasure. You call it being mature. And the wild part? The box feels safer than freedom, because freedom means unpredictability, and unpredictability was never your friend. So you stay framed, properly lit, saying the right lines, wearing the right face, making sure the story keeps moving forward, even if you're exhausted from carrying it. The moment you see the stage, everything changes. Not dramatically, not with applause, just quietly. You notice the lights, the cues, the way certain phrases always trigger the same response, the way certain emotions are allowed and others are quietly escorted out of the building. You realize the writer came after the child. The performer came after the wound. The role came after the fear of losing the room. And here's the funniest part of all. You don't need a new role. You need no role. This isn't about becoming more authentic in a way that requires effort. This is about stepping off the stage entirely and realizing the world doesn't end when you do. The rim doesn't collapse. The story doesn't implode. People adjust, which is deeply irritating after all that work. I'm back at the desk. Same hands, same calendar, same ability to write, different relationship to it. I can still do the job. I'm just not confusing it with my worth anymore. I'm not confusing usefulness with love. I'm not confusing performance with belonging. The role didn't make me lovable. It made me functional. And function was never the point. Before the writer, there was a child. Before the costume, there was a person. Before the stage, there was someone who deserved to belong without auditioning. I don't fix the system here. I don't forgive everyone. I don't tie this up neatly. I just step off. And if you know how to disappear for everyone else, how did you protect yourself? What did you trade for belonging? Write your answer below. Share your experience if you want. I'm still writing these stories and realizing I have a long way to go. Still catching the behaviors I learned and mistook for love.